It's very good that I agree with Igor in many, many points, so I can make my lecture quite short. um, well, thanks for the invitation. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you. We're talking about public space, so I think in a maybe more general term, we have to speak about future cities. What will cities be in the future? What will they look like? But Igor already said it. As far as I understood right now, a new master plan will be written for Brno, and in some way, writing this plan or setting up this plan seems to be a bit strange, because who dares to predict the future, or who dares to know nowadays what we will need tomorrow? And the thing is, these master plans, they last very long. It's not written every year or rewritten. So I think your last slide and what you said at the very end of your lecture made the point. For me, it seems to be a little bit overtaken, this kind of thinking. Nevertheless, we still do it. Why are we doing it? Because we try to negotiate, I think, between very, very different interests. And when we actually define a master plan, there is a lot of different interests involved. And one of them, for sure, is money, like always. And we must be really aware that when writing these plans, sometimes we're really turning, sorry for the term, but shit into gold. And we can really, make a lot of money by doing that. Nevertheless, I said, okay, it's kind of difficult to predict the future, and I just want to illustrate what I'm saying with this slide, because there's quite a young crowd here, so the question is, who of you actually knows what that is? Well, I assume most of you do, but who can really bring these two pieces together? What's the relation between these two? The older ones might know. Yes, you're right. It's for saving batteries of the Walkman to forward the music. So I actually grew up with that, so I was spinning that tape very, very often. And I would have never ever thought that in these days, first of all, this doesn't exist, not even the CD exists anymore, but nobody actually owns music anymore. Everybody is streaming. We own all the music. We have like Spotify, you know, all the time we have all the music. We don't own it, or we own all of it. Yeah. So it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. And the master planning somehow is the try to predict the future, I think. And if we look at architecture, you know, I'm an architect, I'm not an urban planner, so all what I say today will be from a very architectural eye. But the topic is public space, and we all know that basically maybe the buildings we set up, the buildings we plan, they are the first step to define the public space, because the public space usually is what is very often, unfortunately, just left in between. So for me, architecture somehow seems to be trapped a little bit, because what are we doing today? Okay, it's hard to predict the future, so let's have a look at today. Today, you know, we can do everything. There is almost no more limits technologically. Yeah, we can build even higher than the Burj Al Khalifa, for sure. What are we doing today? We are more and more increasing the efficiency, you know. We are planning faster, we are planning cheaper, we are being more cost efficient, more energy efficient. Yeah? And that's a big, big problem, I think, because somehow I have the feeling we end up in doing more or less the same and the same over and over again. Yeah? Of course, we do it nicer, yeah? We do it faster, cheaper, smarter nowadays. But there is, you know, in a way we are forced to do it, because the brief very often of the competition already tells us what to do. Everybody, all the developers, they know what they want, and we are just here to more or less transform the text into the plan. And the one who does it most efficient and most smart hopefully wins the competition. But we are also in a very, very dramatic time, I think, nowadays. Yeah, none of us has been living in the Industrial Revolution times, but we all know what that is. Yeah, and the Industrial Revolution freed us from labor, from physical work. You know, we could start looking into the intellectual work, and we did a lot of intellectual progress. And today, yeah, even the intellectual work will be done by some probably artificial intelligence. So we will be free even of intellectual work. So what to do, yeah, with all this time we have? It's not so wonderful, at least what some studies tell us. Yeah, they say, well, in the future, most of the jobs will be gone. Yeah, about 98%. There are different numbers, anyhow. It doesn't matter. All more or less predict somehow the same. Whether it will be like that or not, I don't know. But they also say, okay, you know, for most of us are architects, there is some hope. Yeah. Because creative work, social work, and of course IT will remain. Yeah. So everything where some kind of empathy is necessary, the robots cannot do, not as quick. Creative seems to be really hard for the robots. So for us as architects or urban planners, there is some hope. We have to do something. And I think, you know, we have to become again innovative. Yeah, not just more efficient. We have to become innovative. And what is innovation? What does it mean actually? You know, innovation is, it's not a question of technology. Because if you think about the text message on the mobile phone, for example, you know, it came up, I think, 99, 98. Suddenly we could text. And then it lasts for 15 years. And suddenly WhatsApp came. And WhatsApp, you know, 25 people working on that WhatsApp. And they sort of defended all the big telecommunication companies. Yeah? No one is writing text messages anymore. All are doing WhatsApp. So it's not about technology. It's about questioning what we know. And I'm just showing that, you know, it's a project we have done in the ancient years, and it deals with flexible floor space, for example, the flexible floor plan. And we showed it in a very, very simple way. But nowadays, the flexible floor plan can also be achieved completely differently. You know, Airbnb, flexible floor plan, every day another floor plan, just change the apartment within a city. So, you know, it's not about, we all know this technology, yeah? It's like sharing the apartment for some money. We have done that already, but they've been innovative enough to make a real business out of it. So, if we speak about cities of the future, and I think if we think about this master plan for Brno, then it is a look into the future. Well, we know what the future cities will look like. Yeah? Of course, all of them, they will be green. Yeah, because we are so smart, we have a lot of artificial intelligence. They will be efficient with all the resources, which is good. They will be very smart, you know, Alexa, I'm sure you know her. So, and of course, they will be profitable. Yeah, they will make money. They will act like enterprises. And many of these aspects, I think they're good. Yeah, green is good, and smart, of course, is good, and efficient is also good. So we have a lot of technological progress in the future cities, and eventually they will make a lot of money. Yeah? And the cities will compete, like which city makes the most money. Of course, let's not forget, yeah, all of the cities, you know, there will be driverless driving. But, and that's the question, and I think that's the crucial question for whatever sort of prediction we try into the future, and whatever sort of master plan, however it's been written. One question is, which innovations emerge out of these technological inventions, yeah? And I just wrote it down. It's definitely not about reading the newspaper while driving. Yeah, this is not the innovation for us people coming out of the driverless car. So we have to be careful that we are not completely forgetting about the most crucial element within the cities, and that's the human. And you know, I'm speaking about all these futuristic scenarios and artificial intelligence and blah blah blah, and there might be different people in the audience. Some of them might be older, some of them might be younger, and there might be completely different opinions about these things. And I don't know, while this driverless driving for the young might be completely, imaginable. Maybe for older people, they say, why do we need that? But there's one constant thing, and it will not change at all. It will always stay the same, no matter how far we're gonna look into the future, and that's the human being. And I really wanna be the one who's like making a point for not forgetting about us as a human being. And we heard it already in the 2 lectures before, that the dramatic twist has to happen in the way we are going to plan for us as a community, and the cities are the locations where the community comes together in a very, very compact way. So we have to focus on us as being the social beings, yeah? And we have to create the very first human cities, and that despite the technological progress we are just undergoing. So I want to just give some points which I think they are very, very general, but they apply to public spaces or to city planning overall. And I think they're so important that we sometimes might forget them. Yeah? Because I think cities today, they have to foster relations, social relations, you know? All of us, we like to know our neighbor, not all of our neighbors maybe. Sometimes we prefer not to know them. But basically, it's always better to have some kind of social relation to your neighbor. And it's not good if the neighbor dies and nobody notices. Yeah? We all know these horrific stories. And there's many different possibilities how to achieve that. Yeah? It could be, for example, just a specific typology of housing where we do not have the dark, tiny stairways, but where we have like a generous, maybe lit from the sky above stairway, and people at least have a chance to meet and build up some neighborhoods. And we have to build cities and public spaces that enable chance encounters. That means, you know, imagine if you get into your car in the morning, then you go to work, you work, then you get into your car in the garage, go back home, park it in the garage, go into your apartment. You don't meet a single foreign person. Never. For years. You know, university times are over where you meet new people. Start working, always the same people. So, what would life be? It would be really boring. So we need to have these things in public space that allow us to do that. And I, you know, just for fun, I like to call it conscious nonsense. Huh? In English, it rhymes, it's kind of nice. But this is just an example. It doesn't have to be like that. What I want to say is, we could also, in Brno, for example, my example would be your kind of clock with all the nicknames. Because nobody knows what it is. You know, people have imaginations, but it brings people together. You start to ask someone, oh, what's that? And then by that, people come together and they build up relations and neighborhoods. So, of course, we have to offer usable public spaces. We heard really good lecture about public space already. And it has to be usable, you know? It's not always about planting trees, as we know here in Siena, but it is the very, very important space in between what we usually draw up. Yeah? And life, actually, it happens in between, you know, rather than inside the houses. Jan Gehl has written a book about that. The human scale, I think, if we follow all these predictions about how many people will live in cities in the future, it's horrific. I could not imagine, but I guess it will be true someday. So we have to respect the human scale. And that despite we have to follow the efficiency, yeah? And efficiency might force us to do some endless housing blocks, all the same, somehow, you know, we know that from social area in the past. But we have to think about splitting it up into small pieces so that it becomes, acceptable for us as human beings. And very, very often the discussion about the skyscraper now comes up. And we will have to deal with those typologies. And to be honest, every architect likes to plan a skyscraper, at least. We do. But it's all about how to ground them. How are they connected? How is the sort of relation of the skyscraper with its public space? And we have already heard that, you know, programming the public space creates a connection of the building and the public space. So another point which is right now, you know, in these times, it's very, very important because I think cities, they have to accept and they have to allow the variety, you know. It's not anymore like this. It used to be the typical family. Nowadays, it's completely different. We have all these patchwork families. But of course, we also have very different sort of ways of thinking and living. And for that, we cannot just offer one typology of shelter. And that's something that unfortunately happens right now. Yeah? Developers more and more extinguish former typologies in housing, for example. Yeah? There is no shared apartment at all. Never has been planned from scratch. Only has been abused by students in old houses. There is the maisonette, it's dying out, you know, because it has a stair. And in the future, we all be unable to climb stairs, at least when we are old. So there's only, you know, we're kind of educating ourselves as the kind of normative person, which we are not. Of course, it has to be affordable for all. Yeah? For all, I'm talking. And it's not only the foreign people who have no money. There's a lot of people who don't have money. And being affordable doesn't mean to be cheap quality. You know, there's many different ideas we have already. Everybody has how to do that. Yeah? Shared space for shared cost. An old strategy. Yeah? And the last, it has to take social responsibilities. And that, I think, is something, you know, we call it social design. We have to incorporate it into our thinking. It's okay if we make some money, but with this money we should somehow help to solve a social problem. And for example, a hotel run by refugees, we've done. The problem is, you know, all these ideas, they are not new, and all of you know them, and we as the planners, we can do that. Of course, we are very creative, we're innovative, but the problem is, without a developer, we can't do anything. And very often the developer says to us, yeah, but nobody likes that. The people don't want it. We know what the people want, and the people don't want it. So people want always the same. So I want to give some advices to the developers and say, you know, the problem is nowadays the people who decide in these companies, in these developers, they have been socialized and raised up in the very past, in the dark ages. Yeah? And then they grow up and they are the decision makers. And then, you know, today they make a decision for the future. They will not even survive. And that's not just funny, it's really a problem, I think. So we have to change in this way of decision finding. And it's not, you know, these people, they have a lot of experience. This is good, but we have to get off this hierarchy thinking, more into the broader decision making, to open up ideas. Yeah? And we have heard it already. Let's ask the users, Because the users will give us the arguments for the innovations. Because if the users are claiming, the developer will offer. If they don't, the market will not do it. Yeah? But we have to be aware that participation also requires a certain education. People have to know what they are able to wish and desire. If you don't know it, it's very hard to imagine some sort of better, different life. So we have to look at other cities, other projects, what is possible, and make that accessible to the people. Yeah? So we have to ask them. We have heard it already lots of times. So this is just an exhibition. We'll travel to Brno actually next March, I think, and we will do that there. People can actually participate. We've heard it. But if we speak about participation, we also have to find the right sort of tools. And the tools, they are not only the paper that we send per mail and people fill it out. Nowadays, you know, some people, they Tinder. So why not use that kind of technology for us as the planners? And, you know, we have programmed a little housing Tinder just to get answers. Yeah? Nevertheless, if we ask the people, we are really surprised what the answers are. And these answers, you know, they are almost requests for the politics. Because without the politics, we cannot control, especially what is called the public space. Because who's going to pay for the public space? We have to find models where actually the developers that make some profit return it into qualities for the public space. And this, for example, of course, could be done within some master planning. Yeah? It's quite interesting. We did this kind of survey. Yeah, I'm over the time. Yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah. We did this kind of survey, and we found out, at least in our office, you know, 70 people. We made a survey, and turned out to be all communist people in our office working. But they wished and desired a city, and they said some things which I can imagine for the future. Yeah. Polycentric cities, walkable, offering different identities and identification. Yeah? The driverless car we have spoken about, you've heard a lot of things about this yesterday, but it's not about reading the newspaper. It's definitely about being the sort of better counterpart to public transport and individual comfort. Yeah? Returning the public space to the people so that they can actually make a living out of it. Yeah. Enrique Peñalosa, the mayor of Bogota, you know, he didn't build a highway because only a small percentage of people own a car. He built a bus route, and people were able, you know, and a bike path. And suddenly people put up stalls and sold things and made a living out of it. So returning the public space to the people, and maybe really thinking completely different in terms of property. We have to keep the property, withdraw it from the market of speculation, keep it in public hands and just sublet the building rights to the developers. Then we could actually keep the prices low for living in the cities of the future. And maybe the definition of property has to be defined differently. Nevertheless, when we speak about public space, we also have to ensure that there is some sort of private space as well. And there is a big, big danger that this one disappears at all, especially if you are in bed with Alexa. Yeah? Speaking, the crowd participating, we heard a lot already. Yeah? And then, you know, there might come up a city which we would have not expected. And we did that little experiment, and I'm not explaining what it is. It's just a city map that came up. And you know, on a first view, it looks already completely different than what we would draw in the master plan. And even the pieces that sort of define the private and the public spaces follow very different ideas and rules. But it's a presentation of what the people want, and it's quite interesting what kind of ideas come up if we really ask the people for whom we are planning, and Igor also said it, if we actually evaluate what we have done and kind of learn out of it. Because every other branch does that. A product is put on the market, and then they ask, was it good? What can we improve? We are not doing that. And especially in city planning, it seems to be very, very difficult because it's such a long-term point. Thank you very much.